This video looks at overlapping actions using simple typography examples. Right, so we have a couple of examples here. We have a piece of text with some simple scale and rotation properties on them. And the idea here is that we're working to scale up, overshoot, and then come back again. So we get that kind of bounce. Gives it a kind of a tactile, springy quality. This is often referred to as overlapping action as well. So this is the first one we're going to look at, and then we're going to look at the use of an effect to create a similar look, except this is going to be applied to the pixels of the type. I need to stretch that out a bit further. So you can see it kind of leans back as if it's getting caught with the velocity, and then when it comes to an end, again, kind of springing it, makes it kind of bounce to a stop. Okay, and this is using an effect called Bend It. So I'm going to hide that, and I'll hide both actually, and just going to get rid of that null object actually, because it's in my way. Right. Okay, so I'll lock these and I'll start the overshoot again. Okay, so I'm just going to go with the word overshoot and bring it down to manageable size. Now for this to scale the way I want it to, I'm going to need to grab the anchor point, hold down Control and snap it to the center. So I'll open up my transform because I'm going to want to modify two properties. I want to see where their keyframes are. I'm going to need to open the full thing as opposed to just hitting S and R and so on, which is fine if you're just modifying one property. So I'll start with the scale and I'll go simple 1 second scale. So it's going to be 100% at the end, and it's going to be not quite, I'll go at 15% at the start. Kind of, we can see it, and then it scales up. Okay, so it's going to scale up in a linear fashion, come to an end. Okay, so this is kind of animation step 1. This is no use because it's very linear and robotic. So what we do is we start adding in additional keyframes, and we're going to first of all get it to overshoot. So it goes from 15 to 100. So I want to come back a little bit. I want to overshoot that, so I go to 120. Okay, so now I have keyframes going up to 120 and back to 100. Now, going to shorten the animation. It's a bit too long, so hold down Alt, bring them all in that way, and I'm going to ease the animation as well, so give it a little bit more of smoothness. Okay, so it goes up, it comes back. And you can leave it, this might be your overshoot, but if you want to really go push this, then you'll put in more keyframes. So we go from 15 to 120, we're going to end up at 100, so we want to come down to 90 in between those two keyframes. So now it's going to go up to 120, down to 90, back up to 100. Okay, so it's going to get a bit of a bounce into it. You can see it there. Now you can play with the timing all day long, and of course motion blur is going to give you a nice blur around the edges when you're doing a scale. So I'll just let that render out with the motion blur. You can see it's got a nice little bit of overshoot. Now another principle of animation is secondary action. So added to our scale, what we're also going to do is we're going to put in a rotation change. So it's going to start from a kind of a diagonal angle, and we're going to bring it to its resting point looking straight on. So back here we want to bring that back to, we can go minus 45 just to keep it even, and that's going to now not just overshoot and scale, but it's going to rotate. Now again, you could leave it as this, or you could go back and you could put in some overlap. Let's say plus 15 degrees. So it's now going to overshoot both on the scale and the rotation. I'll actually kill the motion blur. That's what's slowing things down here. So now it's giving us overshoot on two properties, and it's going to slow that down a tiny bit. Give it some back its motion blur, let it render out, and see how that looks. Okay, so I think it actually needs one more bounce in between. So we're going to go, minus 20. I think I've got that right. Plus, yeah, that's going to give a good bit of bounce. Okay, one more render. There we go. Okay, so now we've got that kind of bounce. Okay. Right, might have overdone it with the rotation here. The idea is that you can have as many of these working together as you want. Okay, so that's overshoot. Okay, so just once again, I'll show you the old version. It's a little bit more finished. Okay, so that's the overshoot. Now, the next one we look at is the example where the eye is kind of, once again, my work area is not long enough. Kind of skids to a halt and then keeps going, as in its center of gravity kind of pulls it over and it bounces. Okay, so this is using an effect called CC Bendit. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just disable this one and I'll keep my animation, so I don't need to do that again. So it just comes back, there's a little bit of anticipation, and then it shoots its way across. So it's just basically 3 position keyframes, all with velocity changes on them, so 0 velocity to 0 velocity with an intervening keyframe there. And we can check that by going in there. So we've got, just change that to 50. Okay, so to use the Bendit, you have to do a couple of things to get it working properly. So I'm going to go and grab an effect here under the distort menu. You see CC Bendit up there. Okay, now initially what you'll see, because the text is over here, you'll see 2 kind of control points here. So they are making the text look invisible because the Bendit effect takes 2 coordinates, a start and an end, around which or between which it's able to bend. Okay, so you'll notice that it actually changes the effect of the bend depending on where these are. Now, for this to work just in a kind of a simple fashion, I want to keep them above, just above and below the eye. Okay, so when it moves, I need them to move too. Now that's relatively easy to do. It's a little bit cumbersome if you don't know how to use expressions and things like that, but we can open up our CC Bendit 2 here. We've got our start and our end. Okay, now what we're looking to do is we're looking to take the animation that we've created, the position animation. We're going to select all of the keyframes and we're going to hit Control or Command C to copy those. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the end property. Okay, if you want to see which one that is, just give it a little shake. So that's the end is up above. And we're going to create a keyframe onto the end property and paste that in. Okay, now you'll notice it disappears. But what it's actually done is it's brought it right down to where the anchor point is on the text, because I'm basically putting the same positions onto that. Now, leaving them all selected, I can now adjust all of the Y properties on all of those keyframes to drag that back up. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it in this instance. We're going to copy the keyframe over so that it takes all of the same position properties, but we don't want it to have the X and the Y all down here. We want to drag our Y property up there. Okay, so we do the same then for the start, paste that in, and then we can actually drag that down a bit. Okay, now we've only modified the Y properties, so we have our keyframes that are going to move it across now exactly where the eye goes, they go, and that allows us to then play with the bend property. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. We're going to keyframe that on frame 1, and then we're going to go to where it reaches the end of the anticipatory stage where it comes back, and we want that to be bending that way so that when it starts to move, it starts to kind of lean back. Then when it starts to get over here towards the end of its movement, we want it to be going the other way. So what it will do is it will kind of come across this way, and then when it comes back, actually we need to put a keyframe here. Get it started on that. So it's going to go, no, that's not right. Okay, 1 second. Need to lean back, and then we could put another keyframe there, maybe bend it the other direction. Do that for the moment. See how that looks. So it bends back and it starts to come back this way. Okay, yeah, that works. Now, the idea here is we get to the end and we set the bend value to 0. Okay, now that will just put it back upright, but as we know with our overlapping action, we actually want it to first of all kind of lean over. So when it gets to the end, it's going to lean that way before it comes back. So this would be simple overlapping action. But we can drag that out. We can start putting in, you know, additional. So it leans over, and we want it to lean back a little bit before it comes to an end. Right? So it kind of bounces a little bit. Now you can see it there. Now again, it's all about what you do with these 3 keyframes, where you position them, and how that center of gravity gets affected. Okay, now the devil is in the detail with these things, so you can again play with this to your heart's content and then put your motion blur on it. Again, motion blur makes it look more kind of photorealistic, but it takes ages to actually put that down to 1/4. We don't need full resolution. 1/3. Okay, so you'd probably put another little wobble in there and just finish off the look. Okay, so that's some examples of overlapping action.